I'd love to hear your take, Caleb. What do you
Well,
think?
okay. Well, a couple things. First of all, take any Fox News coverage of Black Lives Matter or Occupy Wall Street, and omit the word Occupy Wall Street or Black Lives Matter, and insert this trucker convoy, and you've got liberal media's coverage of it. What did they
Hmm.
always do? Right at a Black Lives Matter rally, you'd have one or two people that would say something like "kill cops" or something like that. Right? And so Fox would film that and they would say, oh, Black Lives Matter is a protest movement that wants to kill police officers. They're murderers. Well, most people at Black Lives Matter protesters don't want to kill. I went to many Black Lives Matter rallies. Most people there never didn't want to kill anybody. But yeah, there were some people that were mad and said stuff like that. They didn't represent the whole movement. So I guess one day some guy who was a Nazi showed up at this rally, and so they took a picture of him and they said, aha, this whole movement is Nazi. That's the exact same tactic. And then the other thing, during Occupy Wall Street, what did they always say? Oh, it's too noisy. The people who live in lower Manhattan, which is like, you want to talk about, not affordable housing, right? People living near Wall Street, are annoyed with all the noise and stuff like that. Well, I mean, I'm sure the people in Ottawa are annoyed with these protests. Does that mean that they shouldn't do it? It's just, you shouldn't protest because it annoys somebody. I mean, and like, what about all the buildings that got burned down by Black Lives Matter? Were we supposed to oppose Black Lives Matter because they burned buildings down in those rebellions and protests? Like, this is just the exact same playbook. And what it annoys me, I want to shake these people because they saw through it when Fox did it to Black Lives Matter, and they saw through it when it was done to Occupy Wall Street. But now that the right wing is doing it, they buy the exact verbatim arguments. Oh, there's one person there who had some very extreme views, so therefore they're all deplorables. Oh, they're making too much noise. It annoys the people there. I mean, these are not legit arguments against a protest movement. Now, as far as the right wing funding, you bet, absolutely. I don't doubt it for a minute. The same people that bankrolled the Tea Party, the same people that were big supporters of Donald Trump have put their money behind it. And just like you said, George Soros put his money behind Black Lives Matter and the Ford Foundation and the Caprina Foundation and all
The
kinds of
Gates Foundation, all these
the
people.
Wallace Global Fund. They've all put their money behind liberal protests. But if you can go to liberal protests and try to push communism and among those folks, why can't you go to conservative protests? It's going to be a lot harder because the people have bigoted views against communism. They think communism is their enemy. But I mean, I didn't say it was going to be easy. But if why are some billionaires better than the other? And again, it gets down to this team sport. You're supposed to be on the blue team, and they're the red team, and that's not what we should be doing. We are not foot soldiers of the liberals. We have no duty to defend the liberals, none whatsoever, right? And the idea that these people are fascists and Nazis, like one guy might have shown up with a flag, but I can pretty much guarantee you that that if the people leading that march came to power, they wouldn't kill and murder every communist. They wouldn't set up gas chambers. We're not, things aren't that bad yet. That's not to say some fascist movement couldn't arise. It's not to say there's not a lot of bigoted people who might be involved, but no, this isn't Germany in the 1930s. That's not the situation we're in. If anything, protests like this, the fact that the right wing are the ones championing the anger of working people about these mandates. It's the right wing that has captured their anger, and the right wing is mobilizing them, shows how more than ever that's where communists and socialists need to be. And they need to say, no, this vaccine mandate is not communism. And no, it's not communism that took your job away. It's the big banks, it's the corporations, and that's what needs to be done. But the Communist Party of Canada, like the PSL and the Communist Party USA, they have attached themselves to the liberals and to the labor union bureaucracy so much that they've ended up on the wrong side of this issue, and it's really disappointing to see because that is what will guarantee a fascist victory, right? If socialism and leftism and Marxism become synonymous with the status quo, when working people rise up against the status quo, they're going to rise up to the right. And we need to be braver, right? What we believe in and what the liberals believe in are not the same thing, right? And that we need to stop trying to be accepted in liberal spaces. We believe in something unique. We have a unique ideology and a unique history. We're aligned with actually existing socialist countries like China, like Venezuela, like Cuba. And what we put forward is very different than what the Democrats put forward. And we need to say, look, we have a unique message. We'll take that unique message to liberal protests. We'll take that unique message to conservative protests. But we have a unique message. That needs to be the tactical orientation. We are building something separate. We are building our own thing based on our unique political understanding of anti-imperialism and Marxism. not like we're part of the blue team against the red team. We're like the communist faction of the blue team, but no, we got to stop that.
Didn't Lenin say that communists should go where the workers are at?
Yes. And if the tactics change, or if the situation changes in 24 hours, the tactics must also change in 24 hours. And he also said that exposing the opportunists and the fake socialist leaders is the duty of socialists, and that instead they must go lower and deeper to the real masses, not try to compete. We're never going to be able to out whiz bang and have like sexier books. And, I mean, the ruling class is always going to be able to produce a lot of fake socialists that are better mass marketed than we are. The strength of socialists is organizing real working class people in their communities to fight for their real economic interests. That's what our strength is going to be. We're never going to be able to be, there used to be this event, I think they still have it, it's called Left Forum, and it's this big like socialist gathering in New York City. And, I'm never going to be the king of Left Forum, and neither are you, right? Left Forum is always going to be dominated by these pro-imperialist social democratic voices. The way that socialists and communists gain strength is through recruiting the masses. It's not through taking over the movement, right? And that we need to get out of our heads that the movement is some kind of space we're going to be able to, maneuver and manipulate and become the leaders of. It doesn't work that way. Our strength comes from fighting for average people and putting forward the demands that they believe in, and organizing them in their communities, and not, playing this game of who's the most badass protester, who's king of the protest cage.
So Justin Trudeau and the Prime Minister he is the Prime Minister, but the Minister of Finance responded to these protests with this Emergencies Act. So I want to get your thoughts on this here. Here it is. Around the world, liberal democracies have been facing serious and sustained threats. What I want to highlight here is something that is just, it disgusted me, how they're taking away people's access to their banks here. Second, the government is issuing an order with immediate effect under the Emergencies Act, authorizing Canadian financial institutions to temporarily cease providing financial services where the institution suspects that an account is being used to further the illegal blockades and occupations. This order covers both personal and corporate accounts. Third, we are directing Canadian financial institutions to review their relationships with anyone involved in the illegal blockades and report to the RCMP or CSIS. As of today, a bank or other financial service providers will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account of an individual or business affiliated with these illegal blockades without a court order. In doing so, they will be protected against civil liability. So the banks can shut down and freeze your account if they do not like what you say on social media. The decision to freeze the account is also entirely up to the reviewer, and the reviewer is protected by the government from civil liability for their decision. So a banking employee can freeze the account of someone if they don't like their political views, or even if they suspect that they support the Freedom Convoy, and they can do this without any liability. Now, isn't this an example of fascism if they're working with Big Pharma, if they're being influenced by this? And we know that there is a revolving door with the U.S. government and these private corporations. In Canada, I'm sure there is also a revolving door. But Caleb, what are your thoughts on this ceasing of people's freedom, their access to their money?
Well, again, right, this sounds like exactly what socialists should be against, giving the government this kind of power. If you're really an anti-imperialist, if you're really against the capitalist establishment, you would realize this could just as easily be used against you, right? And that they're more afraid of you, in theory, than they are of these truckers. So if you're a genuine leftist, you would be raising holy hell about how unacceptable this is. But it seems like so many leftists have just become defenders of the status quo. And because they're just defenders of the status quo, they're not worried about it. Richard Wolff has been great on these trucker protests. He has made a number of very good points, very hard-hitting and on point. And I'm sorry, if you're really against the establishment, you should oppose what's being done to these trucker protests, oppose the government freezing people's bank accounts for political reasons. You should recognize that workers on the job have the right to, the right to make demands on their employers and to oppose regulations that they don't approve of. And, and you should also notice that they're taking action in a way that they can actually do what they want. The government of Ontario backed off a lot of its, vaccine passport requirements and stuff, because once they started the blockades, all of a sudden that hit the economy, and suddenly the capitalists stopped losing profits. They started losing profits. So, these protesters are a lot more effective in doing what they used to do. It used to be that's what leftists did. They had sit down strikes and occupied their factories. They had barricades in the streets, right? I mean, and that used to be what leftists did, but now it's the right wing that's doing that. And you'll notice it's jamming up the system quite a bit. It's much more of a threat to the system than anything that Black Lives Matter or Occupy Wall Street has done in the last few years. It's immediately jamming up the system and threatening the profits of a lot of capitalists. And they're responding by giving a lot of what these protesters want in Ontario, but then also heavy-handed repression, because it's much more of a threat. And, if the right wing is more of a threat to the system that we're supposed to be against than we are, that should be a wake-up call that something about the way the left is operating is wrong. And I wish that PSL and Ben Norton and people in the U.S. Communist Party could wake up to this, that the working class is revolting right now. They are revolting, but the right-wingers are leading the revolt. And this is a setup for disaster. And if we don't get out of the movement and get to the masses real quick, this is going to lead to some really bad places.